out in Cancer Journal. Does anybody know about that study? Anybody heard of it? Anybody familiar with it? It's been in the news, and I went and looked at the study up online. It came out in JAMA Oncology, which is one of the top cancer journals in the world. So you know that this study is it's pretty big deal. Okay, if it comes out, if it gets published in a journal like that. And so what the study was about is they looked at 29,000 nurses under the age of 50. So we're talking about younger women, and they looked at diet and polyps, cancer polyps. Okay, and they did extensive questionnaires on these women, and then they were able to. All of these women had colonoscopies, and they matched the diet with the number of polyps they had. What do you think they found?
Very closely related.
Yeah, very closely related. They looked at ultra-processed food. How much ultra-processed food these nurses have been consuming. And there's a direct correlation. The higher the ultra-processed food, the more polyps they had. And they found that women that, and these are young women, we're not talking about, 75, 85 years old. These are under the age of 50. They found out that the women who are eating 10 servings of ultra-processed food a day were the ones most likely to have polyps. Ones that were eating 3 servings were way less likely to have polyps. So that's a pretty good indicator of how diet can affect our health, and now they could not necessarily correlate it with cancer. They can't say, well, these polyps are necessarily going to cause cancer, but they did say in the study that polyps are often a precursor to cancer. And so the interesting thing is these were all younger, pretty educated women. Okay, so think of what your average shopper at the North 27th Street Walmart is. I don't know if you've ever shopped up there before. I have, and I'm shocked at what people put in their carts. What's happening with them? And so again, and I know I've hammered this, so many times, but the least amount of ultra-processed food you can consume, the better. And this is just another study in a major medical journal showing that fact. And you wonder why people are getting cancer at a younger and younger age. What are they eating? Look what they're putting in their grocery carts. And I'm not up here saying that I never eat any processed food. I'd be lying if I said that. I don't eat much. I'm just going to tell you that. I don't eat a lot. I eat some, but not a lot. But I don't eat 10 servings a day, I guarantee. Don't even 3 servings a day, really. But this is a great study in that just keeps bringing us down that road to show us that there's a major correlation between disease and what we put into our bodies. So tonight we're going to be talking about Alzheimer's, which I think is a very important and relevant topic. When I was in chiropractic college, I heard the word one time. It was in my neurology textbook. It was in the 70s. And it's about 78, I think. Yes, about 78, 79 when we were studying that. And the word autism wasn't even in that book. Alzheimer's was, and they described it okay. I went back and read it, but you never heard of it in the media. And now it's like it's one of the major causes of disease. So we look at the Canadian Journal of Psychiatry in 2013 said that 1 in 3 seniors in the U.S. dies with Alzheimer's disease or dementia. Doesn't necessarily mean they die of it, but they die with it. Okay. Alzheimer's is the third leading cause of death in the United States. Now, I've seen other statistics on this. I've seen it's number 6 or number 7. Depends on who you read. And you ever notice that people in science sometimes disagree with each other on things? People in nutrition, the area of nutrition, can say the exact opposite things of each other. You know, it can get kind of confusing at times. But in this journal, at least, Canadian Journal of Psychiatry in 2013 said that Alzheimer's is the third leading cause of death in the United States. So it could bankrupt the United States by 2050 as costs of caring for those with Alzheimer's disease is skyrocketing. And it is. How many of you have been affected by somebody with Alzheimer's? Know somebody with it? Or yeah, probably all of us have been affected by that. So here's another interesting fact. Of 240 experimental drugs intended to cure Alzheimer's disease have failed in the past 30 years. And on January 8th, 2018, Pfizer put out a press release that it had halted research into Alzheimer's and Parkinson's because they hadn't found anything that really worked. Now, this is 2018. I don't know what they're doing now, but the Alzheimer's drugs that they've come out with have not worked well at all. If we look at the brain, it comprises 2% of the body's weight, uses 25% of the body's cholesterol. So the brain is full of cholesterol, actually. Cholesterol plays an important role in shaping the brain's circuitry, and Alzheimer's may be a consequence of an inability of neurons to function properly due to a deficiency in fat and cholesterol. That was Stephanie Seneff, who's a MIT researcher. So I would say this, is that as we get older, our cholesterol tends to go up. Why do you think that is?
The body needs it.
The brain needs more.
Yeah, we need more of it, okay? It tends to go up as we get older. Now, if it skyrockets, that's probably an indicator that your diet is an issue. But, I mean, right now I can tell you the last time I checked my cholesterol, if I went in to see a physician and he saw my blood work, he'd automatically want to put me on statins, which is why I don't do things like that, because cholesterol is a really important part of how your body is supposed to work. What about the plaques found in the brains of Alzheimer's? There's definitely a correlation there, but they found out that these plaques are a defense mechanism of the body to compensate for either low nutrient status, toxicity, hyperglycemia, inflammation, and many other issues that we're going to talk about that can affect the brain. And some of the drugs that they came out with for Alzheimer's were actually very efficient in getting rid of those plaques. The problem is that they made the Alzheimer's worse because those plaques, your body's putting them there for a reason. And so they stopped giving people drugs for those things. So let's look at some of the causes of Alzheimer's. And these are things that are in the literature. We're going to look at 6 different areas here that can contribute to Alzheimer's. So let's look at the role of the ApoE4 gene. Anybody ever heard of that? It's this gene that if you have it, your chances of getting Alzheimer's are a lot worse, okay? And you can, just doing regular genetic testing will show you whether you have this gene. People with this gene tend to have defects in cholesterol transport, so it's associated with cholesterol and sugar metabolism. Now, biological sex and lifestyle play a significant factor in whether this gene is expressed as Alzheimer's. So if you're a woman and you have this gene, your chances of getting Alzheimer's go up by a factor of 4. So you really have to pay attention to your lifestyle if you're a woman and you have at least 1 copy of that gene. So let's say you have 2 copies. Does that mean you get Alzheimer's? Not necessarily. Not if you can control a lot of other factors that contribute to that. So there's another gene that people can inherit. It's called KL-VS. And that actually can protect carriers of E4 from developing Alzheimer's. So even if you have these genes here and you end up with this gene here will protect you from that being expressed, which gets pretty complicated after a while. But again, these are things that you can find out via genetic testing. So glucose metabolism, inflammation, and oxidative stress tend to play an outsized role with at-risk E4 patients. And that's from the book that I read a little while ago called Outlive by Peter Attia. He's a real big longevity guy. It was page 200, by the way. He used to be a cancer surgeon at Johns Hopkins, and he got tired of operating on people and then seeing them die anyway. You know, it's just, so his whole thing is, what can we do to prevent the diseases, the three major diseases that are killing people right now, and that's cancer, heart disease, and neurological disorders. And that's why he wrote that book. So science is showing us that the underlying process that causes Alzheimer's starts decades before the symptoms. That's pretty much true with a lot of chronic disease, is the problem starts a long time before you get any symptoms from it, which is a good reason to, you know, get some testing done early to find out if you're on that path. Now, this is the first cause of Alzheimer's we're going to look at, other than that genetic cause. There's a brain circulation. So this is from a journal called Vascular Health and Risk Management, 2012. It says people with Alzheimer's have at least 20% less blood flow to the brain. Okay, so what are some of the things that would cause that?
Neck out of alignment.
Yeah, that's one. We're going to talk about that here in a second. Absolutely. You know, the shape of your neck and what's going on there. It could be caused also by plaque, lots of plaque in the arteries, okay, which is an inflammatory issue. But yeah, so this is one cause. So in fact, one woman, Dr. Gottfried, I have this book, The Brain Body Diet. She says intelligence is tied to supply of blood flow to the brain. A recent study, and this was published by a chiropractor by the name of Evan Katz in a journal called Brain Circulation, and he found that loss of cervical curve, when you lose a curve in your neck, causes a lack of blood flow to the brain. When you restore the curve by using Adenerol, which is that little thing that I have you lay on, that immediately increased blood flow to the brain. And they looked at 9 subjects with loss of curve in the neck. The way they did this study, this is done at the University of Colorado. They put these subjects in an MRI and they looked at blood flow. It's a functional MRI, blood flow to the brain. And then they put the people on Adenerol, which brought the curve back into their neck, put them back into the MRI, and they got anywhere from a 20% to 135% improvement in blood flow to the brain just by putting them on the Adenerol and bringing the curve back into the neck, which is why I hound my patients so much about doing their cervical traction exercises, which I think some people get tired of me talking about, but this is the reason why. So here's a normal curve, there's a loss of curve, and so when you put somebody on Adenerol, it'll take that curve and make it a lot more like that, and it changes blood flow to the brain. So there's somebody on a type of Adenerol. So it's a biomechanical problem which necessitates a chiropractic solution. According to Dale President, anybody ever heard of him? President. He's like one of the top Alzheimer researchers, period. He's at UCLA. And he wrote a book great book, you should read it, called The End of Alzheimer's. And he said that Alzheimer's is caused by one or a combination of three things: inflammation from infection, diet, or other causes; decline in nutrients, hormones, and other brain-supporting molecules; toxic substances such as metals, biotoxins, pesticides, or molds. It's a combination of those three things. So what would cause consistent decline in nutrients? Anybody? What causes, what is something that people do every day that causes a decline, that leaches nutrients out of your body? Anybody? I'll give you 3 more seconds. It's pharmaceuticals. Every time you take a pharmaceutical, and I can show you in my lab books in the back, every time you take a pharmaceutical in your body, it leaches nutrients out of your system. The nutrients it leaches depends on the class of the pharmaceutical. Now, I'm not saying you should never take drugs. I'm not saying that. I'm saying just be aware of that and understand that that's one of the things that pharmaceuticals do, is they pull nutrients out of the body either through detoxification or blocking the absorption or the manufacture of those nutrients in the body, but they affect nutrition a lot. Okay, so research published in 2013 showed that sugar and other carbohydrates can affect or disrupt brain function even if you're not diabetic or have any signs of dementia. Now, that's in the journal Neurology back in 2013. One of the reasons is, and you probably don't know this, maybe you did, I know I've mentioned it a few times in my talks over the years, the other part of your body that produces insulin other than your pancreas is your brain. Your brain actually produces its own insulin. And so if you have a high sugar diet, that disrupts the insulin in your brain and causes problems. And it can lead to dementia and other brain issues. So inflammation is another one. So high carb diets increase your risk of dementia by a whopping 89%. High insulin is related to Alzheimer's. High fat diets lower Alzheimer's by 44%. Okay? So why would this be? Why is that?
Because your brain needs oil.
Your brain needs fat. So if you're giving it good fat, that's one reason. For sure. Absolutely. One reason. What's the other reason? Okay, so what raises insulin in the body? Sugar, refined carbohydrates. Fat doesn't have any effect on insulin. So when you eat something that's really fatty, like a steak, barely raises insulin at all. Okay, so fat does not raise insulin, but sugar does. So I tend to eat a pretty high fat diet. Doesn't mean that I never eat any sugar, but I tend to have a pretty high fat diet for that reason. And the way you can tell that, what's going on with your diet, one way is to do a blood test called fasting insulin. If your insulin is high, I don't care what you tell me about your diet, you're not eating right, okay? You want to have an insulin below 5. That's the key for insulin, below 5.
Is that the A1C?
No, A1C is average blood sugar over a 3-month period of time.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's another good test, but insulin is like that's a very, very good indicator of really what's going on in your body, how well what you're eating, how well you're eating, how your body's handling carbohydrate. So as we get older, our sugar tends to go up, just like cholesterol. So we have to be careful about that. High sugar diets increase insulin, which accelerates the inflammatory process in the body. Alzheimer's is referred by many researchers as type 3 diabetes. Toxicity. So toxic metal and exposure to pesticides and industrial chemicals can contribute to Alzheimer's. And here's some of them. You can just read those. There's a study that was done recently, and I talked about this study a couple of weeks ago, where it showed that people that lived downwind from golf courses tended to have a lot more Parkinson's disease. And because they spray those, I mean, how do you make golf courses look that good? You know, no weeds, everything's perfect, because of all the chemicals they spray on it. And there's been studies done that workers that work on golf courses tend to die a lot sooner and have a lot more health issues than people that don't, because of all the chemicals they spray on it. So toxicity is a big deal. And there's some of them that can certainly contribute. There is a relationship in some circles that I've read between mold and fungal infections and Alzheimer's. So it's worth it to look at that. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. So let's see, let me get this back here. Okay. There we go. So, inflammation can be triggered by food intolerances such as wheat, gluten, dairy, eggs, plant lectins. And here's the thing that's interesting, is that you've all heard of leaky gut, right? Most of you have heard, you know, when your gut is not, your gut's leaking things in your bloodstream that it shouldn't. There's a very high correlation between leaky gut and leaky brain. So if you have leaky gut, that means the blood-brain barrier has probably been compromised. So that's why I love the Wheat-Zoomer test. It shows me whether somebody's gut is leaking and how bad it is. A 2017 study in the Journal of Clinical and Cellular Immunology showed that intolerances to wheat, gluten, dairy, plant lectins has a high affinity to cause autoimmune issues in the brain tissue. Now that doesn't mean that everybody out there has intolerance to these things, but a lot of people do. And if you do, you need to be careful. I can tell you right now, for me, I definitely have an intolerance to milk. I have a dairy intolerance. I can't drink any kind of milk. I don't care whether it's raised organically, whether it's, you know, right out of the cow. I just don't do well with it, so I have to avoid it. I have some other food intolerances as well. And probably a lot of you do, most of you do. So you can identify those just by how you feel after you eat something, okay? Like, I don't know if you ever noticed, you eat something and then you start hacking up phlegm. That happens to me at times. And I go, I shouldn't have eaten that, you know, or that's not good for me. That's one way to find out is, how do you feel? How does your body react after you eat a certain type of food? Autoimmune encephalitis, which is part of, you know, big brain dysfunction issue, occurs when the system produces antibodies that mistakenly attacks the brain. So that can cause a wide range of neuropsychiatric symptoms. So again, this is an autoimmune issue with food intolerances causing a big part of the problem. And so that's an important thing to understand as well. So in recent years, the number of confirmed cases of autoimmune encephalitis has been increasing annually as a growing number of neuronal antibodies have been discovered. And I'll show you a test that really actually measures these here in a little bit. So there's a very famous study called the Framingham study, and they reported that participants who drank one or more artificially sweetened beverage daily compared to less than one a week had almost 3 times the risk of developing either stroke or dementia. And that came out in 2017. These diet beverages are really bad for you. I don't drink them, I never have. But sometimes the artificial sweeteners are worse than sugar. And so there's really no sodas that are good for you. I just wouldn't drink them at all. Here's another one. I just threw this slide in here. As we get older, general anesthesia is really, really hard on the human brain. Okay, you can handle it a lot better when you're younger. And I had a patient, actually, this happened probably about 8 years ago, 7 years ago. I had a patient who was developing dementia. I'd seen him for a while, and he had like both his knees replaced, and one had been replaced twice, and it still wasn't working. So we went in for a third knee replacement, and he came out, and after he came out of the anesthesia, he had full-blown Alzheimer's. He didn't know who he was, where he was, and his brain just couldn't handle another surgery. And so, I mean, the knee part was, I guess, was a success, but he wasn't. He just didn't know who he was, you know. And so, I'd be really cautious about that as we get older. Try not to have elective surgery if you can. Take care of yourself and just stay out of the hospital. Here's also something Bredesen talked about in his book, and this is also in Medical Hypothesis. It says optimize nutrients and trophic factors. There's strong evidence that magnesium supplementation along with these vitamins can help Alzheimer's. So B6, B12, and folate are your methylating nutrients. They lower homocysteine, homocysteine is a chemical in the body which inflames arteries. So I take a product every day. I carry in my office called Whole Food Folate, which is really high in folic acid and these B vitamins, just more as a preventive than anything else. Plus, my homocysteine tends to be pretty high. So a recent study in elderly people with vitamin D deficiency showed that cognitive decline rates 2 to 3 times faster than those with sufficient vitamin D. So vitamin D is important for brain function. Again, this is JAMA Neurology in September 2015. So having your vitamin D levels checked and keeping your vitamin D levels optimized is a really good thing. And that's something I do on my comprehensive blood panel. Vitamin D serves important roles in both neurodevelopment and protection against the degenerative process. A recent study regarding cognitive decline in Alzheimer's in mice bred for rapid aging and cognitive decline showed a combination of these things maintain brain cell numbers and mass and cognitive function. And I realize you can't always compare mice and people, but a lot of the early research that's done on both nutrition and drugs, a lot of that happens in mice, and there are some correlations there. So this is Environmental and Molecular Biology and Mutagenesis in 2016. Because your brain is 60% fat, it's the most fatty organ in your body. It requires good fat. So man-made fat damages your brain. Where do you get man-made fat?
Seed oils.
What?
Seed oils.
Seed oils, anything ultra-processed food, right? Yeah, pretty much. Margarine, anything ultra-processed will give you that. Intakes of fatty fish have been consistently associated with slowing of cognitive decline and decreased risk of Alzheimer's disease and dementia in older adults. That was actually in Journal of the American Medical Association back in 2016. That's where I got that quote. The study also emphasized diet, regular physical exercise, maintaining normal blood pressure, and cognitive stimulation as other factors that were effective. So here's a Journal of Alzheimer's Disease in 2014 stated coconut oil is a positive survival effect on neurons affected by these amyloid beta plaques. So I use a lot of coconut oil at home, and I use it for cooking. I put it in my coffee, all kinds of things. So this is a pediatric brain surgeon, Larry McCleary, in a book he wrote called The Brain Trust Program, recommends the following diet for brain healing. Diet high in cholesterol and animal fat. Okay, so steak is pretty good for you. Okay, an abundance of fish, seafood, meat and eggs. He also recommends coconuts, almonds, avocados, and the avoidance of empty carbs. So that's a pretty high fat diet right there. Okay, for healing brain injury. I would definitely, if you had a brain injury like concussion, I would definitely recommend eating a lot of organic wild-caught salmon, taking omega-3 fatty acids, eating avocados, things like that, just to help your brain heal. Chronic low-level infections can inflame the body over time and spill over to the brain. And I've seen all of those pretty much in practice, and we have specific herbal supplements to deal with those problems. Hormones, such as your basic sex hormones and thyroid hormones, should be optimized. If you look at the low T epidemic, that we're seeing, a lot of that is really caused by the fact that men are producing enough testosterone. The problem is it's getting changed into estrogen by all the sugar and the stress they're eating, the stress they're under. And so testosterone, you can lower your testosterone just by your diet. By the way, what are these three hormones made out of? Anybody know? What's the basis? What's the raw material that your body makes these out of? I've talked about it before. Anybody remember? It's cholesterol. Estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and cortisol, all made from cholesterol. So if you lower cholesterol too low, you don't have enough to make that. So, so many men I see are on cholesterol lowering drugs. Well, that really hurts your ability to make testosterone. Yeah, I would not go on a cholesterol lowering drug, because as we get older, we need testosterone is really good for the male brain. So low testosterone is not good for men at all. These are other issues that we know that can contribute to Alzheimer's. Peter Attia, in his book Outlive, has a big chapter on sleep, why sleep is so important. And vaccines contain toxic metals. I'm going to talk a lot about that in my Alzheimer's talk next year. So how can we discover the cause of Alzheimer's, or whether you're getting it? Vibrant America has a lab called the Neural Zoomer, which really shows a lot of brain autoimmunity. It shows whether your blood-brain barrier is compromised. It's a great test. Fatty acid testing, really good indicator to look at your levels of good and bad fats. I did that on myself not long ago, and I really upped my intake of omega-3 fatty acids. So many issues must be identified to find the underlying cause of Alzheimer's. So, insulin is a real easy test to do. Blood-brain barrier and brain health. Homocysteine, I've talked about that. That's part of my comprehensive blood panel. Inflammation should be measured, part of my comprehensive blood panel. Fatty acid testing, which is really looks at omega-3 fats and some of the other fats. Food intolerances, leaky gut, vitamin D, micronutrient status, hormonal status, and then toxicity. And I do a very comprehensive toxicity test in the office. I've done it on myself, which looks at toxic metals, molds, and toxic chemicals. And let's talk about low-level laser for just a minute. Now, most of you I've done laser on. Laser is, well, let's see. Let's look at some additional dietary recommendations for Alzheimer's. We've kind of talked about all of these already. Exercise. Let's look at exercise. Physical exercise is one of the best things you can do to prevent Alzheimer's. There's very few things that can help your brain more than exercise. So the risk of Alzheimer's is a neurobiology disease. The risk of Alzheimer's is inversely correlated to levels of daily exercise, even walking as little as 1 mile per day. Exercise is so important for brain function. Low-level laser, there's lots of really good research that shows that it increases blood flow to the brain, and I laser people's brains all the time here in the office, and there's ways that I can tell when they need it. But here's all kinds of studies that have been done on low-level laser and brain function. So finally, you need to challenge your mind every day. Learn to play an instrument, learn a language, solve puzzles, read. Those are things that can help as well. So I've got about 20 more slides after this, but I'm not going to go into those. If anybody wants these, I'll send them to you. You can have these slides. Yeah, I know you want them. Yeah. And just let me know, or let Carmen know tomorrow. And I'll send you the slides. You can have them. Any questions or anything I've gone over?
Is it hereditary?
The ApoE4 gene is, yeah, that's hereditary. So you can inherit that gene, and if you don't, if you lead a lifestyle that's not really conducive to health, you're going to turn that gene on, and your chances of getting Alzheimer's are going to go up. So that part's hereditary. Yeah, definitely.
On the oils, coconut oils, very important. Does olive oil play a role?
Big role. Yeah, olive oil is really good.
And avocado.
Avocado oil,
Yeah.
omega-3,
Yeah.
Fish oil. It's better if you can get it in the actual food. Like eating wild-caught salmon is better to get it like that than taking it separately.
Yeah. On the coconut oil, there's MCT oil that you see. Is that the same?
Yeah, it's just part of the coconut oil, but it's really good. MCT oil is really good.
And you can get that in powder or liquid.
Yeah.
Are both of them the same?
Yeah, it's really good for your gut.
Okay.
Yeah, really, really good for gut health.
Okay.
Now, I don't use that. I just use coconut oil. I figure, well, if I take enough, I'll get some MCT. So that's how I think about it, at least.
Yeah.
But MCT is really good. Yeah, definitely. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you for coming tonight. What is my next talk here this year? We have one more talk, and that's how posture affects your health. I know some of you were here for the last one when I did that. It's several months ago. But if you missed that talk, or you have people that are interested in posture, that's a really, really good talk on how posture affects brain function and neurological function. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much for taking time out of your health tonight. And I hope that you learn something that you can take home and apply so you can keep your brains healthy. Because we're all trying to do that.
Yeah.